Welcome, everyone, to the Real Geek Podcast, where we discuss the financial state of the world by providing insight and data. I'm your host, Johnny Garcia, founder and president of the Real Geek Incorporated, which has been helping clients with all their real estate and mortgage needs since 2019. We hope our show provides a little clarity about big issues. After all, it's just math and science. Also, don't forget to subscribe and drop us a like. Now, on to the show. Welcome, everyone, to this last installment of 2022 of the Real Geek Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Garcia, and I got with me, as always, Dr. Yang Hu and Mr. Ron Davison, going to recap this very interesting, convoluted, complex, scary, yet exciting year called 2022. So welcome, guys. I know that Mr. Davison is joining us from Canada, so is it purposely dark over there because, you know, you're up north and the sun doesn't come out?
It's there's a lot of natural wood in this room, but it is cloudy. It's Vancouver.
Are you in the city?
No, we went in actually just outside. I don't know if you know Langley. My wife is from Vancouver, and we're up at the folks in Langley. So
Okay.
yeah. So it's a pretty we're at a point in life where it's at least twice a year we end up here. So
I like the Pacific Northwest.
it's
I've never
gorgeous
been.
up here. Yeah.
I've never been, so
Johnny,
I need to go check it
yourself
out.
a favor.
Dude, you're missing out.
You know what? You're not the first to tell me that. My old boss, Jared, he lived up in Seattle in Tacoma for a while, and he just kept telling me to go up there and visit, and I'm like, seems so cold. But then I saw the pictures.
I'm happy to live in Southern California, but it's lovely to visit. And
yeah,
I don't know about Vancouver, but I like Seattle is. I feel Seattle is warmer in the winter than DC at times. DC will swing. DC will have a winter where it gets down to like 30s, and then it'll have winters where it gets down to zeros.
okay,
but
you're also comparing
so.
the surface of the sun to the internal temperature of a nuclear reactor. So I'm just kind of like, no, I'll stick to Southern California.
you should get to Vancouver. You'd enjoy it, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like Vancouver. I used to go up there every year for Dragon Boat.
Okay. Okay.
Seattle definitely is on my list of places.
But I'm like all the cities up in the Pacific Northwest, like Vancouver, Portland, Seattle. I think they're all beautiful.
Yeah, they are.
No, the pictures say a lot. No, definitely. Well, now let's move from beauty into beast. However, I was just talking to Ron about this. We're kind of filling him in on my business and how things are going. So we'll start off with some anecdotal stuff that I thought was very interesting. So it seems like there's light at the end of the tunnel. Again, I'm not counting my chickens before they're hatched, but you know, business is starting to roll in again. Mm-hmm. I think our predictions about what the Fed was going to do were pretty much right in line with what happened, and the market seems to react positively to that. You know, I think we are going to see pretty much stable, you know, rates, you know, give or take the normal adjustments for the next 12 months, given that inflation continues to keep dropping. I think this January might be a little bit different because who knows what the Christmas season did to inflation. But for the most part, rates are comfortably in the low sixes, high fives, depending on who you are, and people are starting to adjust to that. But what I was telling Ron, what I thought was interesting was, as much as I thought these rates and the stabilization was still going to force prices to come down, I now have a different take on that. And here's why. Again, anecdotal with a little bit of evidence to support it. So looking at the M2, people are still sitting on a crap load of cash. Okay. So all of those people, you guys can see my screen, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So as I'm talking to my clients, here's something that I realized. All those people who were trapped in bidding wars last year, 99% of them didn't win. So they never spent their money. So they held on to the cash, and they still have that cash. And most of them not all, as you can see, the money just start coming down. Most of them held on to it thinking, I'll wait for prices to come down before I buy. So here's the interesting story. If you were to list a house right now in Southern California for 800,000, and someone had, say 200,000 in cash and was originally going to put $100,000 down, when the interest rates were at 7.5, they didn't qualify for that $700,000 price point. Not because they couldn't. I mean, even if they put down an extra $100,000 down, the DTI, their debt to income, didn't come down far enough.
Payment to income.
Exactly. So, but here's the funny part: if you were to drop that sales price from 800 to 750, and now they put $100,000 down at 650, and 15 people now qualify. Each of those 15 people, a large portion of them have extra cash on hand. A bidding war will start. They have no problem overpaying as long as they qualify for the payment based off of the list price. So even though it was a tactic last year to list low and create a bidding war, I think that tactic will actually still work and make prices actually stabilize, or maybe even go a little bit higher than we thought. It's crazy because people have no problem spending an extra 20, 30, 40,000 paying over list price because they have it. They just won't put an offer on a house that's 20, 30, 40,000 over list or higher than what they can afford. Does that
Also,
make
the cash
sense?
flow, it's really constrained by cash flow.
Mhm.
So if kind of what you're seeing is if what you're seeing if what you're seeing is kind of the general description of the market at large, then right now the buying motive isn't as much kind of a bubble mentality as it is I just need to get a house mentality.
Correct.
Um,
Well, most of
um,
these guys are sitting on just a large amount of cash they've never had in their entire lives. And as we can see, they've hoarded most of it.
mhm.
And from my anecdotal, I mean, I don't even know how I get this data, but from what I can tell is these people's mentality is, I'm going to buy a house with this money because I'm probably never going to have this much money for a down payment again in my life.
Click the 5 year. I'm just curious instead of going back. So a little more gentle. Okay. But that's not a sharp downturn at all.
Not
So
in
again, your
contrast to the
argument
market.
No, I have to check.
now this is money in circulation though, but okay, so essentially you're saying the money's out there to
No,
ramp stuff
I
up.
have to check if the Fed, are doing some sort of so it's some sort of open market because they hold a bunch of mortgage-backed securities and loans, and they can take M2 out by simply selling them off.
So the other thing too is that this spike that we see right here too, this is when they combine the M2 with that other report that used to be strictly just the savings, individual savings.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we see the spike. But the other big half of that spike, because of course it sucks, was all the stimulus. I mean, if we follow this trend line prior to 2020, none of these guys are going to have that kind of freaking cash that they have. I mean, if you follow this trend line right now, it would be a safe conjecture to say that people have more cash now than they ever had in the last 30 years saved up. Because, and I
So
don't even think that this is, I mean, it
Well,
is.
hold on. Go down to what's the series? There's a series where kind of the net savings rate, and right now we've actually dipped below. In the last few months, we've actually dipped below long run average.
Savings are now more liquid and part of M1 money.
But our savings rate has gone down. Our
Yes,
national
yes.
savings
People are now
has gone
saving
down.
less because they're not having to pay their So that is, again, I actually read an article about this.
We're under saving right now. We're actually under saving right now.
Under saving, yes.
Relative to relative to historical mean.
Yes. I think
I
that's
don't.
skewed a little bit though, only because during the 18 months that we were shut down and
No. So I think I don't know the exact number, but I'm just gonna call it. Let's suppose that pre-pandemic is 10%. Um, during the pandemic, that the savings rate absolutely spiked up. Right now we're actually running below that 10% or whatever that 2019 mean is. So you can see, is that personal? Yeah. See how we're actually kind of like and so a lot of that saved up cash is being kind of doled out. So you have people who want to, who are trying to use that savings to buy houses, but you're also seeing stories where a lot of that accumulation is now just to pay kind of essentials, making their car payments, making their
Yes,
rent, so on and
but
so forth.
not only that. I think what the article was stating, and I think it's true, people who were wanting to buy the house, but rates have gone up, and now they're drinking the Kool-Aid about, give it a year and rates are going to come back to the twos. They're like, oh, well, then I'll just use my money to pay down my debt. We've also paying debt down. Well, actually, that's not true. Consumer debt has actually gone up, but I think that I have a sneaking suspicion that this is kind of skewed, only because, to your point, they're paying their essentials. They didn't pay their essentials for 18 months and instead were forced to save it. And I say forced because everything was closed and they couldn't spend it. Okay. With the eviction and foreclosure moratoriums, the number of people, millions of people, didn't make their mortgage or rent payments. Why? They couldn't get evicted. They weren't being reported to the credit bureaus. Okay. They couldn't be foreclosed on. And what did they do with that extra $2,000-$3,000 a month that they were hoarding? Nothing, because everything was closed. They couldn't travel. They couldn't go to the bar. They couldn't spend it. And then once they finally made everyone back on track to normal, they just modified everyone. So there was really no damage. We've given these people this incredible windfall, I mean, purposely or not. And I think what we're going to see is something that is kind of counterintuitive, where, in my mind, if we do hit a small mild recession, which I think we're going to see housing actually go up. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not the economist or the educated one in
I think one of the things that's probably worth talking about too, savings rate has dropped, and wealth effect, right? It's not overwhelming influence in the economy, but it's a strong influence. And over this last 5-10 years kind of thing, that generally there's been some pretty significant gains in housing prices and in stock prices, and all the asset inflation really that comes out of a low, almost negative interest rate. And we may be done with the negative interest rates. We might be into positive territory, and there's been the massive discounting on assets as a result. And it seems very probable to me that when people take assessment of wealth at the end of this year and look at what's happened to the portfolio, look at what's happened to their home prices, which have been stable but starting to dip down, right? There could be kind of a pulling back in terms of consumption just from that wealth effect alone.
I agree. I do agree, but that's my instinct. I think some of the effects I have to think about is that, to what extent. So you think about so also, if you see that it's a decline, um declines don't stay don't declines may flatten out, but declines don't kind of snap back to positive. That's just real estate prices just have this kind of momentum. It's
so
very
yeah,
it's very hard. It's very hard.
You guys can see my my screen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is just for the LA Metro. And if I'm reading this right, from May.
So it's fallen from down to 395 from 420, right?
What, 25% drop?
No, it's more like about 4 or 5, right? Is that percentage? Yeah, it's so but to Yang's point, home prices, it's rare they tweak.
They don't move like
chunk up or boom down.
They don't move like stock prices. Stock prices will have this instantaneous jump. These things have momentum, and just as a general rule of thumb, how's kind of direction momentum is 5 years. It goes down for 5 years and flattens out, or it goes going up. It's going up is one way, but going down, it takes years for all the kinks in the market to kind of work itself out. I mean, there's always the it's different this time, but unless I see something different, my gut instinct is that it's gonna take years for kind of the momentum.
I think the simplest way to explain that, Yang, is I can move in and out of a stock 5 times in one day.
Yeah.
It's hard to move in and out of a house even 5 times in 1 year. Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just a very the market's just much slower to adjust
yeah.
because
You
But
it's hard
that's an
to buy
interesting
and
point,
sell.
Ron, that I have a
let me
question about.
pull. I'll kind of add one more point to that is that, um, you know, there's a whole bunch of reason why stock is, liquid, much more liquid than the real estate market. In addition to this physical moving, if we imagine, if we set a rule tomorrow that says, um, you can only sell stocks in $400,000 chunks, you're
Mm,
gonna absolutely all of a sudden it's gonna be massively, even though technically it's just a piece of paper, because the housing market is this giant chunk of asset that you sell in this one single unit.
mm.
When I sell stock, I might have 100 shares of Amazon. I can say, you know what, I'll sell one or I buy one. And when you have a lot of people selling or buying one, even though it's 1% of their holdings, that creates a very, very deep liquid market.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a great point. I
Well,
like that.
yeah.
Increments of 800,000 for your LA stockholders. You can buy and sell stocks that are worth
Well, no,
800,000.
but to your point, Ron, when you said that you can buy and sell stock 4 or 5 times a day, that's limited to the actual stockbrokers on the floor, right? Because when even in my Vanguard account, if I want to sell, shares of my fund, I got to wait 3 freaking days for it to clear.
Yeah,
Well,
but
fund, yeah, but not a
Yeah.
stock.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And
You know what? That's a
even
good
the
point.
fund, yeah.
I don't think
yeah,
I've ever.
I can
Okay,
buy.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that liquidity. So this liquidity, the stickiness. I mean, all these. That's just one aspect in terms of difference between the stock market and housing market in terms of the stickiness that leads to the stickiness of it. There's a whole bunch of other things. That's why you have this momentum. And so, I think this is gonna I think that's gonna cause the housing price to continue to go in this one direction. It's now I can't tell you how deep it's gonna go, but you know,
Well,
unless something fundamentally has happened to the housing market, that's just my gut feel that it's just gonna keep going for a while.
yeah, and I
Um,
think, that brings me to a what I think might define 2022 as much as anything. And that's the end of free money. And what I mean by free money is real interest rates at the beginning of the year. If you look at like T-bills, it was a
Hmm.
negative 0.35%. And one of the things that people still don't have good instincts for at all, because it's been so rare historically, when you have negative real interest rates and you're trying to do some kind of a net present value on the stream of
Hmm.
income from a rental that you own, or if you're trying to do a valuation of what the profit stream would be on a company, when you have normal interest rates, say they're 5%, the $100 that I'm going to get in the rental income or the profit from the company in a year, that $100 should be worth about $95. I'll discount that, right? So when interest rates are positive, as they have been through most of history, next year's valuation of next year's earnings or rent is less than this year's, and it keeps going down. And over time, if you're talking 20 years out, the value gets pretty close to negligible. And so you're looking at a horizon of 5 to 10, 15 years. Well, when interest rates go negative, which they have been for years now, what
net
that
present
means
value
is
goes
it's the
up.
reverse. So the $100 in a year is going to be worth 102, and then 105, and it accelerates. So one, you get these enormous real estate booms, and we've had that. And here in Vancouver is probably one of the biggest ones, right? But it's just been this
Yes, yeah,
enormous real estate
yeah,
boom.
yeah.
And then if you look at tech stocks where you're talking about future potential, we're going
Hmm.
to make an
Hmm.
electric vehicle, or we're going to, do this great new technology that,
Hmm.
you're going to
Hmm.
see everybody use in 10 years. Oh my word, the valuation is huge
Hmm. Hmm.
because the prospect of that, not only may it go up a lot, but those values are worth even more. And that's just distorted everything because it's basically what it means is people are game to invest in anything at pretty much any price compared to what we're
Hmm.
used
Hmm.
to.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's a more sobering thing. And you're looking at, it's like the Warren Buffetts of the world step up and go, do you remember price earnings? Do you
Well,
want to see what this is worth? Like, what are we going to have next year?
I
And
So
think
so
all
it's
these
so
stocks just boom. And home to Yang's point, they move more slowly, but that could be next year. They'll do what tech stocks did this year.
So I want to actually make this point, and so I have a friend who is much more who is much more at least up until this year was much more optimistic about kind of the tech market and I am, and he used to point he would like to point out that in the last 10 years um uh Berkshire Hathaway has underperformed Nasdaq. But guess who is turning a positive profit this year?
Berkshire.
Not just turning, so you look at all the billionaires who's just getting their net worth just kind of like falling into this dark, like and Warren Buffett is just sitting there having his increase. He's basically the turtle. He's basically the tortoise that's coming in and just kind of like, you guys all sprinted ahead, now you're gasping for breath, and I'm just gonna put along, and he's in the cash position to buy up things, as things go on fire sale.
I think you're absolutely right, though. I mean, Warren Buffett's strategy hasn't changed since he started, right?
Right. He's looking for value.
He always has, always will.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that changed that made Berkshire for the first time ever not outperform the indexes, from what I can see, and please correct me if I'm wrong, which is one of my biggest pet peeves, is the advent of this kind of like, I was just watching this the other day about this dark pool of places that you can do stocks. So before, you needed to be licensed to be a stockbroker and to be able to submit transactions. I still think everyone should be licensed. I mean, you're talking about our economy and valuations, and especially with the advent of social media. I mean, just look at what Robinhood and Reddit did to the whole with the whole shorting thing on GameStop, right? Apparently, that's also been going on with several other stocks. There's a bunch of other things going on.
Yeah.
I'm like, a group of people, because he has 5 million followers, and each of them have $1,000 to invest, shouldn't be able to manipulate the world economy, or not the world economy.
So I would kind of I'm gonna be, I don't know, I don't disagree in terms of the kind of market manipulation, but in the grand scheme of things, you can pump, in the grand scheme of things, GameStop could have a notional value of 30 trillion. But it fundamentally doesn't impact unless people are leveraging borrowing money to buy GameStop stocks. Right. So
I think some of them were. That was some of the
issues. So what had happened was that when GameStop went all the way up, all the banks all the financial institution comes like, hey, no, we're not going to let you borrow money to go buy meme stocks. And once that kicked in, and hypothetically, let's suppose that it just it absolutely, but everyone knew that this whole thing is just kind of like just completely completely makes no sense. You're going to have banks and financial institutions and think about how financial crisis and how things are transmitted. If you have if GameStop gets bid up to so that it's such that it has a market cap bigger than the rest of Nasdaq, if that's not leveraged, so what if it blows up? You might have in the grand scheme, you're going to create some tragedy.
It's more of the systemic problem, because
so it could be systemic, but there are different kinds of systemic. So what I mean by that is systemic as in it brings down the entire financial system. But if the whole thing goes up to $3 trillion and it crashes, and you see number that says
it doesn't hurt one. You're right. The system is fine if one company goes down, but what you've done is set a precedent and an example for other people to now go out and do this. And then it becomes widespread. It becomes it's like a virus.
I would make an argument that pump and dump has always been.
I'm not going to say that the major corporations and
no. What I mean by that is you're always going to have hucksters. You're going to have
100%, and those people need to be put in check. But this is why we regulate them, and we have
I think we
insider trading and
no. That you're absolutely right. You should have, but what in the short run effect, if if you look at NFT now, who's going to go out and buy NFT? In the short run, people, if you get
Wait, say
burned,
NFT?
yeah, like
Yeah, all the Trump supporters. Didn't you
no,
see
no,
a
no,
few
no, no,
awesome
no, but
cards?
no, no, but like, there's definitely a bubble in the cryptocurrency. I don't know what the cryptocurrency world will become, but it has experienced something analogous to what the tech market went through in 2000, right? So Amazon dropped by 90%, but it recovered. But um, but in the proximate, but what at least in the short run, what's going to happen is Amazon drops by 90% 2000, and everyone's like, hey, dude, we need to look at your financial statements, because you actually have to kind of like, you have to give us, you
But
know. But
that's
so I'm saying in the short run,
that's apples and oranges, though. You're talking about a company who generates revenue and actually has profits and losses versus an pseudo currency that is
I told
literally backed on nothing.
no, I totally agree. What I mean by that is that people get burned once. In the short run, they're not going to go back and get burned again. That's a tendency. That's a tendency.
Well, one thing, yeah, one thing I do think happens is when we have these really low interest rates and people are getting more speculative with their money,
Hmm.
um, there's kind of a lag, and I would say that we haven't gotten to fully experience the positives of negative interest rates. And here's what I mean by that. Um, if you have negative interest rates, the first thing is going to be, I think you get weird things like NFTs, crypto, right? Like whatever. If it's got a shot at making money, I'll take it
I
because
just need to plow my
I
money
can't get
somewhere.
returns. Yeah, I gotta try something, right?
Uh-huh.
And in my opinion, those are of little or no value, right? They don't do much for the economy. They're these weird aberrations. And
Hmm.
I think they're manifestations from negative interest rates. But then there's a deeper thing. Like, we had a little flurry of interest the last couple of weeks on nuclear fusion. Well, that's a pretty awesome thing that has a very long window and it could
Hmm.
have
Hmm.
huge value with negative interest rates, even though it might be 10 to 40 years
Yes.
before we
Yeah.
have
Hmm.
plants that are
Hmm. Hmm.
supplementing
But
anything.
not pretty
And that's an
awesome.
awesome thing.
Human history changing.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's just phenomenal, right?
Yes.
But
Yeah.
that to me is like if you have negative interest rates and you're have the vision to buy into those kind of things that could change the world. And I just don't see crypto doing that. I mean,
Well,
crypto
no,
to
no,
me
no, no.
is this aberration.
But
But the point is that it's very quick and easy to go in and do a GameStop or do a crypto and play with that
I'm just
for taking
saying,
advantage of this versus the real fundamental things, right?
I
And
totally
I would
believe.
argue, yeah, we still haven't gotten a chance to really experience sustained negative interest rates that would lead to a longer horizon for policy, like what are we
Hmm. Hmm.
putting R&D into for just private investors uh gaining, making huge gains on things that might not pay off for a decade or two. Like that to me is when you're getting into the next generation kind of economy. And I think
So
I get excited about that potential.
okay, I think BlackRock, they have a year and they kind of their year ahead review, and how they made this point. I'm kind of trying to process this, and so it's about, and kind of Ron, as you talk about, if you think about in the last 10, 20 years, we're in this low interest rate, low inflation environment. It's kind of this like, it's like, wow, what else can you ask from a financial perspective? It's like,
Yeah.
wow, low interest rate, and we don't have to worry about interest rate. And the argument that they made is that the reason why we were in this world that you can only dream of, from a policymaker, if from a policymaker in the 60s, is because the end of the Cold War kickstarted this global integration, and so you don't have
Mm,
to worry about inflation if you're getting cheap knickknacks from China,
mm,
right? You're not worrying, so your cost of living is kind of kept in check.
yep.
And companies can make profit because they have this massive global supply chain where phones are being assembled in China using parts from Japan and Taiwan. And so this international global change has absolutely kept inflation in check. And now we're entering this world with both Russia and China kind of potentially creating the world that is going to undo a fair amount of this
Mm,
international logistics integration. And so kind of the world they see is that banks, maybe after this inflation, central banks would love to get back to the 0%. But
mm,
because we are shifting into a world where things are going to be more expensive. Now it's gonna be, we're not gonna source chips from China, and so the chips are going to be a little bit more expensive, and that's going to increase price pressure. And so banks now can't get away, world banks can't get away with setting their rates at 0 and see 2% inflation. They may have to set their rates at 3% to maintain that 2% inflation. And that changes all the calculus. That means kind of the Ron's world where the tech VCs thrived in the 0% environment. They can do moonshots because it's in 0. But now these moonshots are now more expensive. Now they can't afford to now they can't afford to kind of hit dry wells. And so they're going to be a lot more conservative.
Yep.
And so we could see that 2023 is beginning of a completely different global economic regime.
And that's what you just laid out is both scary and plausible, right? Because of that kind of a shift. And one of the things that I thought was great about Biden coming in is when interest rates were so low and he had these big, let's kill cancer, let's build infrastructure. And, well, if your interest rates are negative, well, that's phenomenal, right? Like one of the things I still think we should do more in government policy is make clarification between, and I know there'll be all kinds of debate, but what's an expense? What's an investment?
They locked it's locked in. They locked in a lot of the cheap cost of funds.
Right. Yeah. And if we could, classic thing from the 50s with the highway, right? But any of these kind of things where you build infrastructure out, you build some kind of big investment, make some big investment. And if your interest rates are negative, oh my word, what a fabulously valuable thing that is. Because if you get 2 or 3% return each year on that, you have increased GDP, you've made a more affluent world, you've created more cool new things. And it doesn't matter if some portion of them fail because others will succeed. And, it just makes the world better. But it induces more investment. And that's really, in my opinion, the main thing you're after is if you're interested in change over a lifetime, the big question is how do you get a higher portion of investments into really cool thing, a higher portion of the money, GDP and all into that. And so that to me is the most compelling question. If you care about lifetimes, what's going to happen over lifetimes, right? So this to me is probably one of the biggest stories is that we had this extended period with negative interest rates, and a lot of it was wasted, on crypto, on asset price valuation of homes and existing stocks. And it's worth remembering that when you first go public, you have money now to do your business. Once stock is sold, it's not necessarily going into funding the business. Like it opens opportunities for that and all, but it is a little different, right? I'm buying it from the guy who bought it from the guy who started the company. And that's very different than I'm giving you money to start this new business, or I'm giving you money to
That's only in the IPO, right? Every transaction after the IPO has nothing to do with the company anymore.
Well, and that's an extreme way to put it, but it's not a false statement. I mean, there's a lot of truth to that, right? So that kind of a thing, right? And last year we had this incredible in 2021, not 2022. We had this incredible rise in VC funding, and it was really exciting to me. And then I dug into it more and I realized how much of it was just various forms of crypto.
Yeah, but you know what? But prior to crypto, the VCs have been around for the last 20 years doing a lot of incredible things. I mean, you have even the people like, I don't know if I'd call Elon Musk a VC because he's threw money into companies, but
so this is actually the real engineering and that going back to fusion, right? So think about at some point kind of game this out. At some point, fusion will become a technology, but then someone needs to fork over a few $100 billion to kind of to build a giant tokamak, whatever. And
I could see governments doing that though because it's a net benefit to them.
Well, so it has to be a government because kind of the real engineering guy on the YouTube TV, he made this point. And I think it's actually very interesting because it's not about tech, it's about the economics. And so the point he made is that even if you get rid of the perception of risk and safety, even if that wasn't a concern, most countries will still not do current nuclear fusion energy, even though right now it has a lower levelized cost. And the big reason is because the front end investment is that even though you get this lower marginal cost, you're asking someone, say, we need you to put in, $20 billion to put up a nuclear plant that won't come
Mm,
online until 5 years later. Where their alternative is like, well, you have cheap gas. Okay, it takes you a year to put up a gas refining gas turbine. And even if the electricity cost is a little bit higher, you get the immediate gain. And so from a economic, from a cost benefit cash flow perspective, most people say, you know what, we're not gonna, we'd rather not wait 5 years. And so that is always going to be a consideration. So even though you have this, you come down to this, slightly higher marginal cost, slightly lower up and capex, versus something with massive capex but near zero marginal cost. It's hard to convince someone to go with the second, the
Yeah,
um
I mean, this is the problem we have with politics, right? Let's just say the U.S. government decided fusion absolutely is the way to go, and we need $100 billion to build our first reactor within the next 7 years.
mhm.
Okay, that has to be voted on, and the freaking corporations have so much freaking power within these politicians that even though it's a net positive for the entire world, and this goes back to your point, Ron, that I wanted to bring up, you keep talking, or not you keep talking about, but I am not of the same opinion that most people are worried about humanity as a whole in lifetimes ahead of themselves.
mm,
I think
mm,
people are so self-involved these days because of social media, and I think that's what crypto was. I think that's what all these things are, is these influencers, and it's, you no longer have an ambition of wanting to change the world. It's, how can I become a billionaire? How can I become a millionaire? I want to be out. Even the entrepreneurs, right? The number one question, the number one, I want to be a unicorn. I want to go out there and be the next $1 billion company. I don't care how I do it or what I do it. We saw it in crypto. We saw it in NFTs. And again, I think one of the big things about crypto that makes me mad is the way that crypto was originally started and defined. The no regulation, anonymous, I think is completely and totally false. But the technology is amazing. And unfortunately, I think that the blockchain technology, I
mm,
think, is game changing. I think it can change title, it can change smart contracts, it can change a bunch of things, but it's been so intertwined with the idea of cryptocurrencies that this collapse that's happening has the potential of ruining a very, very, very powerful technology that we should be utilizing. There should be an online. I mean, the idea of coinage and bills, that's dumb. That should go away, and there should be a way. And I don't think people understand. I know. Let me rephrase that. I know people don't understand the economy or the monetary system well enough to even understand what it is that they're promoting. Okay, the reason things are regulated, the reason things are tracked is like, if you get robbed or someone screws you over and you want to sue them, the only way that happens is if we can track the money and figure out where to go, who did it, and all that fun stuff. Okay, regulation isn't a bad thing. I still trying to figure out and wrap my head around where this idea that regulation is bad. Laws are bad. It hurts me in some way. The whole purpose of regulation is for protection. Period. Give me a regulation
it
that's
was a
meant to hurt.
pretty sustained campaign coming out of the 80s, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Anti-regulatory, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
it's
but
yeah.
it's a thing. I mean, and I get more and more scared too, because I watch more and more of these videos where they're just interviewing random kids off the street, asking them, "Hey, what country is Ohio, or is Cincinnati in?" And they say Ohio, and I'm like, "Wait, what?" Or just
That's low hanging fruit. But I mean,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, but the regulatory thing. So one of my rebuttals on that is, what do you call a football or basketball game with no rules or officials?
Just a
It's
free
a
for all.
brawl.
Yeah.
It's a brawl,
Oh yeah,
right?
well yeah,
Like,
it's
I mean,
anarchy, right?
this, yeah, and so modern societies, economies, same thing. You want guys who want to win, cool, right? Want guys to be able to score a touchdown or make a shot from 3-point range. That's a beautiful thing. and we're going to make sure that it's done in a consistent,
There's refs
the
everywhere.
economy,
Matter
right?
of
Like,
fact, we have video refs now.
Sure.
No,
But when you're talking about economic activity, we need the referees, right, who make sure that it's the best basketball players who are winning the games, not the best brawlers. And it's
we
a similar
also
thing in the economy. You want the guys who are most creative and inventive and create the
we
best
just got to get the
organizations or
players
technology who get
out of the
rich.
referees.
Ice
Yeah.
hockey actually is followed what had that
What?
exact
Let
same
them
kind of.
brawl?
Well, also, so what happens is that, and this is kind of top down actually. So I'll use some NHL. So I don't know if you noticed, I don't know if you noticed that there are far fewer fights now in the NHL. And it used to be that 30, 40 years ago, the joke is that, I went to a fight and the hockey game broke out. And
Yeah.
the idea was that, you expected a fight and teams carry brawlers. And at some point, the powers that be, decided they realized that wasn't selling the game. And so from a purely financial perspective, as in, hey, we need to we need to sign TV contract with ESPN. They changed rules. They got the refs to enforce to enforce a lot more penalties. Because what had happened is that the old version of NHL, they were those brawlers were sending very, very good skill players into early retirement.
Oh, interesting.
And so
Still hurting the bottom line.
Eric Lindros, right? He was kind of the first version of these very big players that was super skilled, super fast. And I believe he retired because he was getting so many concussions. And so they like the NFL say, hey, we're gonna not let you have brawlers that go out and literally headhunt the other team's best players just so you can win, because yeah, you might win, but you create a product that's vastly inferior that no one enjoys.
They missed an
And that's a perfect
opportunity.
example, of sub-optimization versus global. So Yang, you'll appreciate this. I came up to Canada last week, and I was here about 2 hours, and I grab my smartphone and I go through my Twitter feed, and literally the first thing that Elon and the gang said to me, it's some video from the 70s of Wayne Gretzky in a foot race with Pele and who else was it? A couple other it was one of these cross sports things.
Yeah.
And Gretzky just beats him in a sprint.
And
I just cracked up. I thought, oh, this is a reminder. You're in Canada. Just remember, Wayne Gretzky is the most amazing athlete ever. Like, this is the first thing that I'm told, basically.
Well, Gretzky is an amazing hocky player, but he's a very mediocre athlete. And
he was a great sprinter. Yeah, no,
by his own admission, he wasn't actually very, very he wasn't a very good, that's by his own admission. And
how to tell Yang's not in Canada? He just boldly making the statement.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it was a joke, and you want to be careful what you're saying.
I get it.
By his own admission, he was not the strongest. He was not like, he's got good speed, but he wasn't the what he was very good is that he was kind of like the Tom Brady of ice hockey, in the sense that he knew where everybody else is and when to put the puck on their stick.
Well,
I'll send you the link to the video.
Because he had Luke Robitaille as his King's guard.
No, he had Marty McSorley.
You're right. Marty McSorley as his bodyguard.
But this is but if you look at, and I was playing hockey last night, we're talking about how things have changed. That like when they first, after the Cold War, they were signing kind of these Russian Red Army players, and Pavel Bure, and he pulled this, like, at the time it was on SportsCenter all the time, when he's skating full speed, he backhands, wraps the puck behind him and behind his legs, kicks it out forward, and just completely dekes the like, and 20 years ago that was like, oh my God, did you see that? Now, like, every 8-year-old kid at the rink that said they can do this. It's not YouTube. It's everybody's practicing. The level of competition is just leaps and bounds.
I wonder, though, to your point, you just said YouTube. I wonder how many kids these days are just watching it on YouTube rather than going on the ice and trying it. Like, I
no, you have to try. You have to try. You can't. It's one thing to watch it. It's
no. I'm just saying that I think it's awesome that happens, and I think when we see it, when we were younger anyway, if I saw Pelé do I don't know how many times I smacked my head on the ground trying to do a bicycle kick because I wanted to be Pelé. But I don't see any of the kids. I mean, I don't see kids outside at all playing today. I mean, that's what scares me about the.
It's the professionalization. You don't see playing kids playing outside, but if you go to a rink, you're gonna see a lot of you're gonna see a lot of suburban parents paying tens of thousands of dollars, putting their kids through ice hockey camps. And
And
actually, that's
now good segue into income inequality. Yeah, I'm like,
Well,
suburban parents can afford to send their kids because
yes, yeah.
most likely that's just a local park that had a ice hockey rink or
Ice
roller hockey
hockey,
rink.
ice hockey is expensive. Ice hockey is, I mean,
yeah.
Nathan
Every
Chen.
sport is expensive, Yang. I don't know if you've ever. I mean, my
No, I
goddaughter
agree.
is
No,
3 years old.
so
I
no,
had
agree.
no idea. Gymnastics. I'm like, you freaking tumble and jump on things. How is
Like
it this expensive?
Nathan Chen had to pay for his own way for training. This is an Winter Olympic gold medal winner, world, like the best figure skater in best male figure skater in the world for years running. And he was scratching, he was kind of like scratching enough money to he had to kind of like scrounge for money.
So should we do a wrap on 2022?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. That's
Just
what I was.
on
I was going
okay.
to go into the income inequality, and
That
my summary is like,
So is that
I,
your
I never had my one question answered because
yes,
I told
yes.
Yang, I'm like the other day, I'm like, you know what? I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and if the economy is a closed system with a finite amount of money, even though it's not necessarily true, but this and that, should billionaires exist? Can a billionaire actually spend or contribute enough of
justified?
the money he's captured back into the system? And more importantly, even if he does, oh yeah, people are going to say, oh yeah, Elon bought Twitter and he spent 30 billion. First off, he didn't. But do we want Elon making the decision, one person making the decision of where that large amount of investment goes? You
It's
know,
it's easy. It's much easier to tolerate. It's much easier to tolerate billionaires when the pie is growing.
yes, yes.
And we may be in the world where the pie, at least the growth rate of the pie is going to be a lot more diminished because we're entering this world where central bankers have to keep the rate at 3% to maintain inflation.
I'm just saying billionaires shouldn't exist. I mean, marginal tax. I mean, what I mean by that is marginal tax rates of 90%. If you look back into the 50s and 60s, they make a whole lot of sense. I mean, I don't understand this idea of like,
So economists have done this. I mean, I don't I agree that extreme income inequality leads to this kind of potential abuses, but
these are revolutions. I mean, France.
well, but economists have looked at this, that anything above 70%, you lead to you lead to rampant tax dodging. Um, that
I have
roughly
news for
speaking.
you. It's rampant even below 70%.
Yeah, but this is where, it's one thing to say that we want to set the upper marginal tax rate at 90%, but as with everything, it all comes down to execution. What is your enforcement mechanism? What is your,
I guess my
get that.
policy.
That's all part of the same argument, right? I mean, the two biggest, and I was just reading an article or reading a study about this. The two biggest ways that people are accumulating, or not accumulating, but I hate using the word hoarding. What's the word? Yeah, I guess accumulating wealth is through inheritance.
Yeah.
And through
we definitely should have a high inheritance tax.
That's one of the things that I don't
I think
get.
we should have. So
Yeah.
I think we should have. In fact, that's actually how this is why the South Korean president ended up in jail and just got sprung out.
So Johnny, on your search there,
Yeah.
pop in share of total net worth, and then look for a top percent. There it is. The top one, just hit it there.
This one?
Yep. So this is a share that the top 1% hold. And to your point, I actually think billionaires should exist. I think they make sense because you have people who can create wealth that goes separate. Like, I'm a huge policy wonk and fairly liberal in terms of what kind of investments we need to make in poor kids and infrastructure and long-term R&D. And then I still love the idea that you don't have to get 51% of people to understand or support what you're doing on these fringe projects that have a huge potential. And so some billionaire with venture capital backers and all that can go create great wealth. But to point you're just making, I think you can have both. I think you can have the creation of wealth, and then you can have like a wealth tax and or at least a more serious inheritance tax. So you don't see this over time where it goes from like 23 point whatever percent back in the beginning of this series, right? Up to nearly a third. Like that's a huge gain. So you're talking about for the late 80s, about the time, right, that we're cutting all these tax rates and inheritance rates up to now, that's a massive increase for the top 1%. And that yeah, I think you can have both. I think you can make sure that people are richly rewarded if they get it right when the rest of us didn't have that vision or capability. And you can make sure that that doesn't accumulate over time in the form of a modern aristocracy, right?
To be fair, when that gets updated, it's going to be much lower. Given how much of the stock prices got vaporized.
Elon's lost a little bit. Yeah, he's
So
down 60 billion. I don't know about you guys, but being down 60 billion in 1 year would wipe me out.
that
You know what? And
it
the
would
fact
kind of
that he
hurt.
didn't even blink, and I think that's what angers me. Right? That's what angers me with the idea of a billionaire, right? I'm just kind of the fact that money is power, and I don't care who you are or what
Yeah.
philosophy you believe in, that is just a existential fact. And what I mean by that is not that money can force anyone to do anything, but money can force a lot of things from most people.
Yeah.
Right,
And
but
Well,
okay, so now a lot I don't know what to, but what would be interesting to see is that of that share of that, let's call it what's that 31%? Of that 31%, what is the composition of that 31%? Right. So
well,
maybe
there's wealth inequality among the wealthy.
no,
yes,
right. But let's just I don't know if you can do it, but ideally, right? Ideally, actually I think you might be able to create this data. So let's say that 30%. Let's just say of that 31%, 5% is denominated in land or housing, and 10% is in stocks, and another 20% is in ownership of actual businesses or other assets.
Not
Now
publicly traded.
yeah, but let's suppose that I'm gonna make up some number. Let's suppose that 20% of that 30% is stocks. That's a very volatile, that is a very volatile share of wealth, right? Because
Hmm.
we're down 20%. So this if they if 10% of that 30% is in the form of ownership of stocks, that's you're gonna at the next time they have this number out, it's gonna drop by 2%.
does Fred even have the S&P 500 over?
There it is. Yeah.
Um and 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 so and so that's something, and so you know I'm all for kind of breaking out the guillotine and all that stuff, but you have to, you still
No,
have to
It
kind of make
also
sure the
I
adjusts.
numbers.
think there's
Yeah.
very simple things that can be done to fix the system. I think by its that the system can self correct, right?
Yeah,
Getting
yeah,
money out
yes.
of politics, fixing the voting system, allowing only people into Congress that actually, rather than getting, that care about the future and lifetimes ahead of us, making a requirement that you actually have like a political science degree or something like that to get the job. If I can't work for Fannie Mae because I don't have a college degree, you shouldn't be able to run for
Well,
Congress
okay,
or
okay.
president.
I'm gonna sum up my 2022 with what's his name, Santos, that New York congressman.
What do you say?
So I don't
I'm
know if
not.
you're familiar. So the Santos guy, he was really, I think he was representing Bronx and Long Island, and so according to his bio, he graduated from Baruch College and was an executive, and was a rising star at Citigroup and is Jewish. Turns out none of that is true. Turns out he didn't go to, no, turns out he didn't go to he didn't graduate or go to Baruch College. He was never employed at Citigroup, and when faced with this, and he actually also wasn't Jewish, and in the New York Times, this is literally what he said. I never said I was Jewish. I was Jew-ish. and and I feel like that's kind of 2022 in summary.
Well, I think 2022, what we're going to see, look back on, is this end of free money, if you will. I think that's
Yeah,
going to be one of
yeah.
the biggest
I think
biggest
so.
shifts when we look at and what that'll mean for home prices in
It's a
2023 and
regime
24
change. The
and stock prices and policy options. And yeah, it's just going to be very, very big deal. And then of course, next year, we're not going to, I don't think, see much policy change because
no.
we got a split Congress now. So, it's going to be one of these things where everybody better love the status quo because it's hard to change it.
Even
So,
when they own three houses, they can't do crap.
I think historians in the future will use will have the Russian invasion of Ukraine as a watershed, because there's a good chance we transition into a less integrated world going forward. We're already at that. Russia is once again being disconnected from the world logistics supply the same way that Soviet Union was for 70 years. And somebody actually made this point on YouTube is that there's question whether or not bankers might be unconsciously over hawkish because they know having a slower economy is going to help the West help Ukraine against Russia, as it grinds down their war machine.
And my summary of 2022 to wrap all this up is really simple. Crypto bad, fusion good.
I like it. Yeah, no, it's such a fascinating year, and it was fun opining on what's going on here because these are big changes. And that's a fascinating thing, Yang, with the notion that really this battle between autocracy and democracies, and we've had a democratic recession the last 3 to 5 years, which doesn't get reported nearly enough, in my opinion. But if that mucks up globalization, that could easily be as bigger story than the zero interest rates.
We'll actually have to look at. There will be economic historians trying to measure how the withdrawal of Russia from the world logistics line in 1918 impacted the post-war economy. And I think that's going to be kind of sort of a guide kind of going forward.
What a weird way to celebrate the 100th anniversary of that, huh?
Yeah, I guess.
All
Gentlemen,
right, guys.
always a pleasure.
Yeah,
I love our talks. Thank you so much. And I will see you guys next year.
Happy New Year.
Right.
Happy New Year.
Great. Thanks, gentlemen.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Well, guys, thank you so much for listening in this week to the Real Geek Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit that like button and subscribe so you can stay up to date on any new episodes. This is Johnny Garcia in the Real Geek Podcast studio saying it's just math and science. Once again, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.